guys, so today is my books I've read this quarter video. So I'm going to be sharing with you guys all of the books that I read January, February, and March of this year. I have actually most of the physical books with me. I think there's just one that I'm missing that I had to return to the library, but I have most of the other ones with me. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. I like to do these, like I said, every quarter, and I just kind of walk you through my thoughts on each of the books I read. I try not to give away any spoilers or anything like that, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Thank you so much for watching, and let's just go ahead and get started. So the first book that I read was actually, it's kind of small. It was Douglas Adams's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is the first book in a series of 5 books, and it is interesting. It is science fiction, which I actually haven't read too much science fiction books in my life, but I did really enjoy it, and I am like tempted to purchase the next 4 books as well to see where it goes. If you don't like science fiction, space, aliens, if you don't like that kind of stuff, you're not gonna probably enjoy this book. But it also kind of has like a deeper meaning to it as well. And it kind of goes into, I don't know if it's like existentialism. It definitely has different interpretations, and the reader can kind of take from it, I don't know, like whatever they want. So it basically follows the demolition of Earth, and there's one human, well, technically 2, but there's one human that you follow his escape from Earth that gets blown up and demolished, basically. So you follow his journey through space on different spaceships. You meet some very interesting characters. Anyway, if you like science fiction or you even want to just start getting into it, I would say give this one a go. The other one that I actually would say I liked more than this one was Slaughterhouse-Five. So that one is a little bit science fiction-y as well, but it has realistic elements to it with the war and PTSD. So if you are starting to get into science fiction or you want to, I'd actually probably recommend Slaughterhouse-Five first and then going into this one after, because this one is like, to me, on a whole different like science fiction level than Slaughterhouse-Five. So anyway, that was the first book I read. The next book that I finished this year was The Idiot by Elif Batuman. This was actually, I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say that it's a book that I would reread because I felt like it didn't go anywhere. So I was kind of enjoying it as I read it, but by the end I was like, oh, it was just like a snapshot in a young woman's life. She is in, I think she's in first year university. So it's like her first year of school plus the summer following that first year. And it's basically, that's all you get. You don't get a pre-story. You don't get a look into what the future will look like. It just like starts and it ends, and there's nothing before or after. So it was kind of different. I've never read a book that has ended so abruptly like this one. So I wasn't like super into the ending. I like the ambiguousness of that ending. But yeah, I don't think it's a book that I would reread. It was just, it had a lot of frustrating characters, like especially like the main character even. What's her name? Selena or Celine? She was kind of frustrating because she was just so passive and naive, and she kind of just let things happen to her, and she didn't really do much to make her story kind of move, or I don't know, she was more passive, and I just felt like she was quite naive. Everyone is at that time, like everyone. I remember being super naive when I was in like my first year of university, because you're kind of learning everything and experiencing everything for the first time. So I get that, but also it was just frustrating to read as like a third party. I don't know how to explain it, but I wasn't super into the characters in this book, and I didn't really like the ending, but I kind of liked the style of writing, and I liked that I'm so into like coming of age books. So those are like my favorite genre, even though I'm way past coming of age in my own life. I grew up loving coming of age, and I loved it all through high school and university, and now I still can't let go of that genre. So I felt like this was borderline coming of age. The next book that I read was Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers by the one and only J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm not going to talk much about it because obviously a lot of you will know the story of Lord of the Rings. This is number 2 in the trilogy. I'm currently reading Return of the King, which is the last book of the series. Two Towers is definitely my favorite. It's my favorite movie, and it's just my favorite. It's so good. Like, I love the Two Towers so much. On the last one now, and then I can officially say I finished all of the Lord of the Rings, and they have not disappointed. They're really good in a different way from the movies. I love the movies so much. They're like my favorite movies, but the book is just as good in a different way. So yeah, Lord of the Rings, complete. Another book that I read that I don't actually have with me, so I'll leave it somewhere on the screen, was All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. And that was a really sad novel. It was centered around World War II. It followed the lives of a young French girl who was actually blind and a young German boy who had to join Hitler Youth and the war from that. And you get like both sides of the war, I guess. And it was very touching. It was heartfelt, and it was a bit hard to read because it was so sad and somber. It kind of tried to pull in the lighter areas of the war as well. Like, it tried to bring a little bit of happiness into it, and maybe not happiness, but just like hopeful moments in both of their lives, both of the main characters' lives. So it did try to tie in that, the hopeful side of things, instead of all the dark and depressing and horrifying parts of the war, but it was still very hard to read. And I am just like not into war, like reading about World War II. I just think it's so horrific that I have a hard time reading about it, and even watching war movies. Like, I have a hard time watching World II movies. But I'm gonna read one more, I think, called The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, which I also think is centered around World War II. So I'm gonna give that a go, but then I'm gonna take a break because I find them to be very hard to get through. At the same time, when I was reading this book, All the Light We Cannot See, it was right when Putin invaded Ukraine. It was so weird that it was like paralleled at the exact same time, because a lot of the stuff that was happening, which is shocking, but a lot of the stuff that was happening in World War II in the book were also happening in the Ukraine at the same time, like people not being able to leave. Maybe that's why it was a little bit harder for me to get through, but it's still a good book and I would recommend it. Okay, and then I finished Othello. I tried to read one Shakespeare or play, I guess, a quarter, and this quarter's Shakespeare was Othello. It's a tragedy, and it is a very frustrating tragedy because the antagonist is Iago, who kind of starts the whole thing rolling, and then he manipulates Othello. And Othello he starts off as this very strong figure, and he's like very set in his ways, and he knows right from wrong, and then he just spirals out of control, all because he allows himself to let his insecurities, I guess, get the better of him through Iago's pushing and Iago's manipulation. So it's very frustrating. It's annoying to read as well because the irony, and it's just, like you're reading it from the outside in, and you just get very annoyed and frustrated with Othello's actions, with Iago, and with everyone in it who doesn't help stop things. It's actually not a hard tragedy to read though, so if you haven't read Shakespeare a lot, or if you haven't started his tragedies, Othello is actually a little bit easier, I think, to get through. And the next book I read was Harper Lee's Go Set a Watchman, which was kind of a sequel to Kill a Mockingbird. It happens way past the events of To Kill a Mockingbird. So Scout, or Jean Louise, is an adult now. I think she's 26 in the book. Oh my god, I almost dropped it. I really didn't like this book. I found it very hard to get through. I regret reading it because I know people have faults with To Kill a Mockingbird, but I personally really love that book, and it was like one of my favorites growing up, and it still was. But now that I've read the sequel, I actually don't know if I could read To Kill a Mockingbird again and think about it the same way. It just seems like Harper Lee kind of ruined a lot of the characters. Like, she definitely destroyed Atticus Finch's character, and he was one of my favorites, and now I don't think I can think of him in the same way ever again. He just comes off here as like a bigot, like a racist bigot, and it's just, I hate it so much what she did to his character. And it makes me think, because I've read that she actually wrote this book first, and then the publishers didn't want to publish it, so she released To Kill a Mockingbird. So I don't know the whole history behind it, but it makes me think that she wrote To Kill a Mockingbird knowing that Atticus wasn't advocating for Black people and Black rights. He was just trying to obey like law and justice, and it was it's so frustrating now, and I'm really annoyed that I read this book. I was even warned not to read it, and I still did. So I would not recommend this book if you loved To Kill a Mockingbird, it will change your mind on that classic. So yeah, anyway. And then the last book that I read this quarter, which I actually just finished, was Pastoral Song, A Farmer's Journey by James Rebanks. This was picked as one of my book club's books of the month, and so we read it. It's not a book that I would read if it hadn't been chosen by someone in our book club. Like, I just am not super invested or interested in farming life. This is actually a nonfiction. The author, James Rebanks, he owns a farm in the English Lake District, I think it's called. And it's very technical around farming, and it's interesting in that, like, it kind of shows the transition from old country farming to modernized farming and the challenges between both, and like how do you balance both the old style farming with the new farming, keeping animals and the environment in mind. So it is interesting in that sense. I just struggled a lot with this book. I didn't find myself super invested in it. I kind of just read it to get through it, and I wouldn't read it again. But if you are interested in farming, or you're just kind of interested in seeing how progress has affected our planet and farming and livestock and crops and everything, then I would recommend it. But yeah, it was a little bit of a bore for me personally, but maybe I'm just not open-minded enough and I just couldn't get through it for that reason. Anyway, those are all the books that I finished this quarter. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you've been reading recently or what you are planning to read down the line. On my book list, I have Return of the King. I want to read The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I still need to get through Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, so that'll be next. And I also want to read The Once and Future King by T.H. White, and I think the last book on my reading list, these are all like huge books, so they're going to probably spread across the entire year, but I also want to read Don Quixote. So those are upcoming for me, but let me know what you guys are planning on reading. Thank you as always for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more videos, and I'll see you in my next one.